Jack.
Levi.
The Book Club from Hell.
This book was divinely inspired.
That's one way to put it.
This outdoes the Eye of Argon. So Jim Tice has been knocked off his throne as the master of purple prose. Amanda McKittrick Ross, or who was a nom de plume of Anna Margaret Ross, is the reigning empress of purple prose. This book's prose is so insane that it goes from being terrible to actually stopping me from knowing what's happening at many parts of the book. The plot's not complicated, but I just couldn't follow what was happening because the prose is so dense. And then it keeps going and becomes, in some strange way, transcendent. It becomes so bizarre that I really like it. I found myself alliterating in my own writing because Amanda McKittrick Ross's love of alliteration.
She loves alliteration.
Insane so alliteration. She will have almost an entire sentence where every single word is alliterated. It's so odd. We will try to convey how strange the prose is just by reading sections. And there are so many different things I could say.
You can almost just like pick anywhere in this book.
You actually could pick any sentence here, and it's.
Let me pull up my copy.
No, she's among the greats. She's up there with Tice. She's up there with Lord Timothy Dexter in terms of stylists. James Joyce wishes he could write like this, but he just couldn't. So this book is Irene Iddesleigh, written by Amanda McKittrick Ross in 1897. So this was a pen name, like I said, of Anna Margaret Ross. She was an Irish novelist, or an Irish teacher whose first husband, Andrew Ross, who was a station master in Larne. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing names of Irish towns and cities, whose pronunciation oftentimes seems to be diametrically opposed to how they're spelled. Anyway, for their 10th wedding anniversary, her first husband financed the publication of Irene Iddesleigh, this book, which is a very sweet present. It's a very nice thing to do. And upon that happening, Amanda McKittrick Ross was born and became the novelist we all know and love today. She wrote 3 novels during her life and a number of poems, and was impressively confident in her writing. So tastes weren't so different back then that people just loved this book. They responded to it more or less the same way that people now respond to it, and as we respond to it, which is this is just insane. But she wasn't having any of it. I'll just quote from Wikipedia because they put it very well. A reader sent a copy of Irene to humorist Barry Payne, who in an 1898 review called it a thing that happens once in a million years, and sarcastically termed it the book of the century. Which, I mean, if it happens once in a million years, it would be the book of the century by definition, but also the book of many centuries. And that slight complaint with Barry Payne aside, who's firing shots at my boy, Amanda McKittrick Ross, he reported that he was initially entertained, but soon shrank before it in tears and terror. Ross retorted by branding Payne a clay crab of corruption and wrote a 20-page preface to her second novel, Delina Delaney, in which she disparaged Payne at length and suggested that he was so hostile only because he was secretly in love with her. But Ross claimed to have made enough money from Delina Delaney to build a house, which she named Iddesleigh. That's Timothy Dexter behavior.
Yeah. Dexter behavior, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's so confident. She also repeatedly said that her critics were just not smart enough to understand her novels and her talent. Which, okay, in her defense, given how insane the prose is, certain sections which might be discussing something as mundane as, or imparting information as mundane as is a character in one location versus another, and they're actually so hard to pass that I would get through an entire paragraph with a certain character in a strange superposition of, well, maybe they're in all of these different places. I don't know. Until the McKittrick Ross wave function collapsed when she finally just accidentally said clearly what was going on.
Yeah.
So what were your thoughts going into this book? Had you heard of this?
No, I'd never heard of it until you'd sent it to me. And then,
you got hit with this blind.
Yeah, got hit by a train. And I briefly looked it up when you sent it to me or when you suggested it, just to have a quick, okay, what am I getting myself into on this one? And hoping that it wasn't too much like Timothy Dexter. And it's in the same like class, but it's also very different.
Yeah, I think Timothy Dexter was illiterate. He was illiterate and insane, and that's where a lot of the magic comes from. Whereas I feel like McKittrick Ross has the opposite problem. She's too literate. She's over literate. So she can string a sentence together.
Yeah.
The book is, there's no, I was going to say there's no weird spelling. I guess there's technically no weird spelling if you take her very odd neologisms as correctly spelled. So her English skills are so advanced that she'll just be making up words.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, she's over literate. Like she just has her speech stat is too high. Like it's gone over 100, and that's what's led to Irene Iddesleigh.
Yeah. Yeah. So I didn't know exactly what to expect. And I've never been great at getting through some of the Victorian era novels. They're not really my thing for the most part.
Mine neither, but this is that turned up to not 11, turned up to 1 billion.
It's one of those things where you almost think this should be. Is this them lampooning the subject? Like echolalia or something? But no, she's dead serious.
Yeah.
Anyways, what did you think?
Yeah, I picked this book, so I was more aware of it. I just heard that this Irish woman in the 19th century wrote the most insane romance novel ever, and thought, all right, that sounds good. Let's have a look. And I flicked through a few pages. I witnessed the prose and thought, yeah, this is definitely worthy of an episode. What I didn't anticipate, so I knew the prose was just bonkers, but I didn't anticipate that the plot itself would also be kind of bonkers. It's got so many of the elements of a tragic romance, but none of them quite gel. It feels like they're all just thrown onto the page. They're not really linking to each other in any way except insane coincidences. I don't know if I want to call it incompetence, because it's almost like it's incompetence animated by divine genius. It is truly one of a kind. There's just nothing like this.
Yeah, I guess to me it's I think there was a bit of a trend back in the mid 19th century, right? Of, I guess these are kind of like the telenovela of the Victorian era, right? And there's some bad telenovelas, and for the most,
it's almost like the Bronte sisters, but insane.
But insane, yeah.
Yeah. I really don't think we can do justice to it in any way but reading out sections. We'll go through the plot. I feel like the plot's actually very straightforward once you have it out in dot points, like I've done. Once you have the spark notes, it's just, this book's all style.
Yeah, it's all stars. She could have cut it down to like 5 pages.
No. The magic of this book is in the prose. This book could have been expanded to 500 pages. Just as magnificent.
And
Although
say
I
just as much.
I would have lost my mind if I had to do 500 pages of it. So I thought I'll read out the first part of the book, the first paragraph. I also want to note as a structural thing she does, which I really approve of. She always begins a chapter with a brief section. It might be a few sentences. It might be a little bit more of describing some grand invariant of the human condition. She'll offer her philosophical thoughts.
Nowhere. Just start a chapter.
Yeah, and it's the start of every chapter is like this, and she must have read it because this is fairly common to do. At least to begin and end a book. As bookends is a common technique. I haven't seen it as the beginning of every chapter without fail.
Like Anna Karenina, the opening of Anna Karenina.
Exactly.
She saw that and she's like, I'm
going to do this, but crazier. And every chapter's going to have it.
Whatever. Yeah. 19 or 20 chapters, yeah.
If one chapter in Anna Karenina started off well like this, then every single chapter...
What if I just did it every single chapter?
Yeah, and unlike you're talking about happy and unhappy families in Anna Karenina, these are much deeper and much better. And as the book goes on, they just get harder to follow.
Yeah.
I think she was running out of ideas, and some of the ones later in the book are just word salad. I actually don't know what some of them mean. I'm pretty sure I think I've noted down the ones that I read and
that are even crazier.
Reread a few times and just thought, I actually don't know what this means. This is less clear than Heidegger. It's remarkable. So I'll read a section from chapter 1 where she sets the scene. Within the venerable walls surrounding this erection of amazement and wonder may be seen species of trees rarely, if ever, met with. Yea, within the beaded borders of this grand old mansion, the eye of the privileged beholds the magnificent lake, studded on every side with stone of costliest cut and finish, the richest vineries, the most elegant ferns, the daintiest conservatories, the flowers and plants of almost every clime in abundance, the most fashionable walks, the most intricate windings that imagination could possibly conceive or genius contrive. In fact, it has well been named the Eden of luxury. And as I read this, so this is very close to the start of the book, it's introducing Sir Hugh Dunfern, the current owner of the Dunfern Mansion, and the only son of John Dunfern and Irene. Irene being the adopted daughter of Lord and Lady Dilworth of Dilworth Castle in County Kent. I thought this was a crazy passage when I started reading the book. Having finished the book and gone back, it's really tame. The book gets way more wild than this. There was only a bit of alliteration in there. The metaphors weren't that crazy. She only put something in quotation marks in a very odd way once. Have you noticed in certain parts of the book, she'll just put bits of a sentence in quotation marks, but it's not a quote. It's just in quotation marks.
Just to highlight it for some reason.
She just wants to put it more punctuation. It's a very heavily punctuated prose style as well.
Many, many subclauses.
Which I approve of.
Deeply nested.
So this story it's setting in County Kent between the Dunfern Mansion, where John Dunfern, who's an eligible bachelor, I was going to say eligible young bachelor, but I think he's like 40 in this book.
Yeah.
An eligible bachelor.
40 summers.
Yeah, he's not 40 years old, he's 40 summers. She's been playing too much Skyrim. He's really handsome, he's a great guy. Amanda McKittrick Ross, throughout the book, no matter how badly John behaves, will just keep saying he's a great guy. Irene's lucky to have him, or to have had him. Which is, I guess, we'll get to all of these things, including the strange characterization when it pops up. because this book is a jewel box of of authorial decisions which are baffling, but somehow work. I just don't know how this happened. Anyway, we're introduced to John. We're introduced to the Dilworths, who adopted Irene Iddesleigh. So Irene is the main character of this book, and she's been adopted by the Dilworths, Lord and Lady Dilworth. Lord Dilworth is really good at basically everything. He really cares about his community. Lady Dilworth is sick. And Amanda McKittrick Ross keeps foreshadowing that she's going to die in a really, really heavy-handed way. And then when you expect her to die, she doesn't. And then really late in the book, when you've sort of forgotten about the Dilworths, Lady Dilworth just dies off screen. We'll get to her final meeting with Lord Dilworth as well, which was just out of nowhere. It really threw me.
The foreshadowing is pretty heavy-handed.
It's very intense. Within a few sentences, you know that Lady Dilworth is going to die.
Everything in this book is fairly heavy-handed.
Yeah, actually,
she's definitely the pinnacle of tell, don't show.
Yeah. She does like to tell you everything.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Irene is known as the Southern Beauty, and she's ready to be married off. And John Dunfern meets her at a ball, and he's enchanted. He loves her, and invites her back to John is invited to Dilworth Castle, and I just want to note that the invitation is called an effusion of cordiality in this book. This is only chapter 3, and I already had a good feeling that the prose was only heating up.
And she just became more unhinged.
No, I mean, it does get more unhinged. I think she was. It's a really common thing, particularly with independent books, independent novels, how the prose style will take a few chapters to settle in. And oftentimes the author's most confident prose is at the end of the book. And it's just what happens when you don't have the resources to pay for multiple revisions with an editor. So I'm very forgiving of that sort of thing. And I think it really works for this book. It completely works in its favour because it warms you up to Ross's insane prose. Because I don't think a human could handle getting blasted with the final few chapters of this book cold. You need to have been warmed up and acclimatized. I do want to I'll read out the section of when John meets Irene and Lady Dilworth, and it goes so well he's invited back. So, not until the horses dashed up the winding avenue with increased alacrity was he shaken from his meditating attitude to be ushered once more into his home of boundless wealth. The lonely stare of grave bewilderment took the place of happiness that formerly seemed built in abundance for him within its walls, as he entered the palatial and gorgeously equipped abode he principally inhabited, feeling the tinge of the dull past filling him with entire despair, whilst meditating on the happy future which presented itself to him. How in a trivial period was this lonely spot, he thought. How in a trivial period this lonely spot, he thought, should prove the beacon of never-dying bliss, when once furnished with the most precious treasure of all, a virtuous woman. Ah, the very thought of his embosomed and anticipated alliance made him nervously happy, and believing a bright and noble future lay in store for the lonely owner of Dunfern Estate, he resolved to indulge nature in a few hours of calm repose. That was only 2 or 3 sentences as well. She loves semicolons, which I do too. I don't blame her for that. But it's really funny reading these sections that, as someone not fully initiated into Irene Iddesleigh, I copied into a Word document because I thought, yeah, these are really, really crazy prose. They're so tame in hindsight.
She also, in that one, you get a preview of how much she loves adjectives.
Yep.
I feel like it's one of those things that you're supposed to learn very early on in writing, learning how to write essays or creative writing, not to overcook it with the adjectives. Nobody ever was just let her know, maybe you don't need 3 adjectives on this. You can't get it.
I'm all for people like this pushing the boundaries of what you can do. The thing is, yeah, for most people, go easy on them, but
her execution is just so fantastic.
It's, yeah, if you're this confident with being maximalist, basically in every direction, any dimension you can pick, this book is maximalist in, except the length, actually. It's not a very long book. This could have...
She's straight to the point.
Yeah, this could have been 1,000 pages. If she wrote a 1,000-page book, if I found out that, say, this woman's third novel was 1,000 pages, I would not be remotely surprised. In fact, I'd think, yeah, that's the natural progression. Apparently her other novels are equally as bananas in terms of their prose. Anyway, that John's really interested in Irene. You're told that Irene is playing hard to get, but at this stage, it's unclear if she's playing hard to get, if she's trying to make John jealous, or if she's said that she'll marry him. It's already it's becoming really unclear what's going on. So what does happen?
Mildly confused.
Yeah, this book is, you're in a continuous state of delirium in this book because the prose is very disorienting. I guess the clarity of the plot is very disorienting, except in hindsight. Once you know what happens, you can kind of backfill certain events. And then also just the time course of it is very disorienting. She was a master of disorientation because certain things will take a really long time to happen. Like Sir John going back to his mansion from Dilworth Castle. And then other things, there'll be periods of this book where years will go by in one sentence. So you're just always thrown. She never lets you catch your breath. Anyway, Chapter 4, John and Irene have announced their engagement. It was really quick. And I like this quote. Yes, when the merriment was at its height and the heat too oppressive to allow much comfort for the corpulent, the espoused of Irene dropped unexpectedly out of the midst of the aristocratic throng, and being passionately an ardent admirer of the fairy-like fruits of the efforts of the horticulturalist, directed his footsteps towards the well-filled conservatory at the south wing of the building. And this part was really hard to follow what happened, but again, knowing what happens later, I can now decode what happens here. So Irene is in love with her tutor, who's... He's lovely here. McKittrick just turns him into an abusive alcoholic out of nowhere later in the book. He just starts getting trashed and beating her, which I guess, again, it's a tell don't show. I didn't see that coming, that plot twist, that character development. But he's lovely at the moment before he's just had his brain transplanted by the author. So she is talking to this guy. Oh, what's his name? Was his name Oliver?
Oscar.
Oscar, that's it. Yeah, Oscar. And she's talking to Oscar, I think in the greenhouse. Maybe she's flirting with him. Maybe she's doing it to make John jealous. Or maybe she just loves Oscar and doesn't want John to find out. Certain aspects of character motivations, particularly Irene's motivations, are still opaque. She remains mysterious, despite the fact that I finished the book. But I think
it was implied or maybe stated that she wanted the security of Dunferm's being his wife.
I think it because wasn't it her
status? Her
adoptive mother wanted. So the Dilworths are falling on hard times. Either they've run out of money or they know they're going to run out of money. They have a presentiment.
I think they're like mortgaged up to the hilt or something like that. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And they want Irene to be taken care of. But you get such mixed signals because at times Irene seems really happy and you're told she's so happy with Sir John and how great he is. And then at other times she's just acting like a brat.
Yeah. Now, I thought that it said that when they got engaged she was 11 or something like that. Let me double check.
No, I think no. She was way older than that. I'm not sure. She's young, but she's like there's not Lolita.
Okay, let me read this paragraph. See if we can decode this.
That said, I'm very willing to hear evidence to the contrary because of how confusing some bits of the book are.
Yeah. Okay, is this... Okay, I'll read this to see if we can make sense of this. Love's path, on which Sir John was known to tread with the step of intensity, seemed smooth as the ice of Inglewood. There were no obstacles in his way, of which he was yet aware, save imagination. This, also, was chased from his mind by the evident and ample return of Irene's polished affection, the foul gloss of which he failed to notice, and whose pretensions... For some reason, pretensions is underlined. I don't know. Sorry, I didn't notice that. Why did she underline it? Whose pretensions?
Just looking back through the book, there are so many things like that which are just. It's just insane. Like, why is it underlined? I don't think any other word in the book is underlined, or I didn't notice one.
Yes. Whose pretensions were so cleverly carried out as to defy detection. I'm pretty sure what she's saying is he's got the hots for Irene. I'm pretty sure. Irene was an accomplished and clever girl, and well able to sustain her hidden regard throughout for one who for years previous had been endeavouring to move the great barrier of position which blocked his path of approach towards her affection.
Okay, so as having read the rest of the book, I think I know what's going on here.
As yet, her parentage was totally unknown to Sir John, so John doesn't know about who her parents are. Still, he felt it must not have belonged to the rude and ridiculous, since she possessed all the qualities outwardly and features of a highly refined race. And when only a girl of 11 summers, when the worthy hand of benevolence, friendship, and love clutched the tiny fingers of absolute want, there visibly seemed nothing lacking in appearance, manner, or education to solicit the pity or suspicion of her charitable guardian and protector.
Wait. So she was 11 when they got engaged? And he was 40?
At least when he was courting her, I suppose.
Wait, what? Oh, that completely changes the book.
Sir John Dunfern's many visits of late to Dilworth Castle had been creating quite a sensation throughout the quiet corners of costly curiosity, until an announcement appeared in Mac's Society Journal to the following effect. A marriage is arranged to take place in August between Sir John Dunfern of Dunfern Mansion, County Kent, and Irene Iddesleigh, adopted daughter of Lord and Lady Dilworth of Dilworth Castle in same county. Yes.
Oh, what the fuck?
He started at least courting her when she was 11.
That completely changes it. So unless a lot of time passed. But then also her tutor is hitting on an actual child.
Yeah, I mean, what was the...
But the tutor has known her for years as well. So she was a lot... Like, she was under 10, presumably.
Yeah, she was...
When he was going out of his way to try to marry her.
Yeah, so this is essentially like a...
This completely changes the book.
A Lolita, like, grooming story, basically.
It makes the book much more
really, really gross, actually.
That's
40-year-old man marries an 11-year-old. I don't know, what was it like in the Victorian era? Like, how old were they?
The more I dig into this book, the crazier it gets. Yeah. It doesn't ever become easier to comprehend.
There's levels to it. It's got a lot of reread value.
It's got a huge amount of reread value. Okay, I came across the first paragraph of chapter 6 So we've got those grand statements. I copied one of those into my notes and have just written underneath it, I don't really know what this means. So already she's really cooking with these. I quote. Wait, no, actually, you can tell me what you think this means.
Just pass it through the double passing out.
The silvery
Jack
touch
and
of
Levi.
fortune is too often gilt with betrayal. The meddling mouth of extravagance swallows every desire and eats the heart of honesty with pickled pride. The impostury, not a word that I'm aware of position is petty and ends, as it should commence, with stirring strife. But conversion of feminine opinions tries the touchy temper of opposition, and too seldom terminates victoriously.
I don't know what you're talking about.
There are so many sections of that when, as I was reading, I thought, oh, actually, maybe I'm just being hyperbolic, and maybe it's talking about how things that start well often end badly, or, you know, nothing is wholly good. But then as I keep reading, I think, oh no, she's not really saying that, is she? It's... I don't know what to make of it. I just don't know what she's saying.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find this quote as well.
While you're looking too, I also want to say that in chapter 6, there are now only 7 days until Irene is to be married to John, and she's distraught that she'll be taken from her true love. And in my notes, I have, she is distraught that she'll be taken from her true love, ? Because Ross keeps telling you, or keeps hinting that this is happening, but we don't have any context. We haven't been introduced to her tutor yet. We've only just seen her talking to some man one night. And that's about it. The plot regarding this point, which is really important in the book, has been just completely mysterious. And Irene also now hates Sir John, and it is said openly that she wants to marry her poor tutor, whom, again, is not something we've been introduced to. So we actually just don't know who this guy is. But Irene just hates John now. And I have learned she's also 11.
And he nearly, at one point...
Actually, okay. So a criticism I had was that Irene's behaviour seems really childish in this book. But
she was a child.
Accurate. She's actually just a child.
Yeah. So it's forgivable for her to maybe not be entirely sure about marrying a 40-year-old dude.
Yeah, but she's really sure about marrying someone who's presumably younger, but still much too old to be marrying an 11-year-old.
So I'm going to give you guys a taste of the dialogue. So
the dialogue is really good.
So this is after they get married, before Sir John Dunfern, why did I write Firm in my thing? Yeah, Dunfern, actually finds the so a little bit of a plot twist. Reveal is eventually Irene is locked in a part of the mansion by her husband and his head like mistress, not mistress like a fair mistress, like a woman who helps him with stuff. And Rachel. So before that, he is suspicious of her and kind of accuses her and brings her into his office or bedroom or whatever, and has a stern talking to with her before he has conclusive evidence, but he's suspicious. And he says...
The fact that she's a child completely changes the dynamic of this, because
he's about to lock a child.
He's giving a talking to at this point, she's probably, what, 12?
Maybe.
Which is actually kind of...
a couple of years old.
Yeah.
Maybe, like, at best, she's, like, still 15 or 16.
She's still a child. He's giving a child a talking to.
Okay, so she sat down, sitting next to him, right? And he starts... Oh yeah, that's right. Because she'd been cold towards him, basically, giving him the cold shoulder, right?
Yeah.
And so he's upset about this. So Matters had appeared so unpleasant and altogether bewildering of late that Sir John formed a resolution to bring them to a crisis. Looking fully into the face that seemed so lovely just now, with the dainty spots of blazing ire enlivening the pale cheeks of creeping sin, Sir John began. Irene, if I may use such familiarity, my wife, can I call you by your first name? So, Irene, if I may use such familiarity, I have summoned you hither. It may be to undergo a stricter examination than your present condition probably permits, but knowing, as you should, my life must be miserable under this growing cloud of unfathomed dislike. I became resolved to end, if within my power, such contentious and unladylike conduct as that practiced by you towards me of late. I think that was all one sentence. It is now quite 6 months, weary months, since I shielded you from open penury and insult, which were bound to follow you, as well as your much-loved protectors, who sheltered you from the pangs of penniless orphanage, and during these 6 months, which naturally should have been the pet period of nuptial harmony, it has proved the hideous period of howling dislike. Okay, so I bet she's 12. I, as you see, am tinged with slightly snowy tufts. He's got grey hair because he's fucking 40-year-old. The result stifled sorrow and care concerning you alone, and on the memorable day of our lions, as you well are aware, the black and glossy locks of glistening glory crowned my brow. Then, just 6 months this day, no trace of sorrow or smothered woe, no variety of colour where it is and shall be so long as I exist, no furrows of grief could then be traced upon my visage. But alas, now I feel so changed, and why it just keeps on going this fucking monologue? It doesn't stop.
Yeah. But Sir John hasn't taken a breath yet. He's going blue in the face.
One breath. So a little bit further down, I don't want to read it all fucking in one. No, I'll just keep going. I got two more paragraphs. Because I have dastardly and doggedly been made a tool of treason in the hands of the traitorous and unworthy. I was enticed to believe that an angel was always hovering around my footsteps, when moodily engaged in resolving to acquaint you of my great love and undying desire to place you upon the highest pinnacle possible of praise and purity with my power to bestow. To deal with these places. I was led to believe that your unbounded joy and happiness were never at such a par as when sharing them with me. Was I falsely informed of your ways and worth? Was I duped to ascend the ladder of liberty, the hill of harmony, the tree of triumph, and the rock of regard? And when wildly manifesting my act of ascension, was I to be informed of the treading still in the valley of defeat? I am, who for nearly 40 years was idolized by a mother of untainted and great Christian bearing, to be treated now like a slave. Why and for what am I thus dealt with? And then he says later, okay, I will skip it. Speak, Irene, wife, woman. Do not sit in silence and allow the blood that now boils in my veins to ooze through cavities of unrestrained passion and trickle down to drench me with its crimson hue.
And Ross just never breaks character. That she just writes like this the entire time. There's no section which is just straightforward. You're just hit with this constantly. Oh, actually, so John and Irene go on a honeymoon to Florence.
Yeah, again, so it's after the honeymoon. She's like 11 years old.
This may as well be a father-daughter trip. Because of their ages. He's taking his daughter to Florence. When they get back, the Dilworth estate is empty because the Dilworths have just completely run out of money. And
although they've got 3 mansions, somehow they ran out of money.
Yeah. But they've sold them now. And this is something she does a lot, actually. She'll use words that have an existing meaning to mean something else, which etymologically kind of makes sense, but But it just makes everything feel very alien. So in this case, I'll read a quote where she uses the term socialism to mean, I think, society. But again, it's used in such an odd way that things become even more alien. So, pale and deathlike did she appear in the eyes of her husband, who was utterly overcome with grief at the sudden collapse of his wife under such a stroke of anticipated sorrow. And more grieved was he still when he found on inquiry that the removal of Lord and Lady Dilworth from their heightened haunt of high-born socialism must sooner or later be revealed to her, who, as yet, had only tasted partly of the bitter cup of divided intercourse and separated companionship. There's also all one sentence. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. We are introduced to Rachel Hyde, whom you mentioned earlier. She's a servant of John's.
She's kind of like a Nurse Ratched type.
So well, no, you're told that she's a terrible caretaker, and that she terrorizes everyone around her, and hates Irene. However, Rachel's actions tell a different story, because one of the only things we ever really see Rachel doing is helping one of the other servants in the house who feels sick and doing her chores for her and taking her dinner. It's another one of the bizarre things about this book, where you will just be told that Rachel Hyde is an absolute cow, but then you only ever really see Rachel Hyde being quite a nice person. You just have such whiplash all the time.
Yeah. Again, it's tell, don't show.
Yeah, tell, don't show.
She just tells you this is the way it is.
Oh, wait. No, okay. Chapter 9, Irene gives birth to a child. And so what's going on with the time? Because there are a few things going on here. One, it seems earlier that she was 11 not that long ago. But also, there doesn't seem to have been much time for her to have been pregnant, or it wasn't mentioned. And
according to a very, very brief Google search, marriage was between the ages of about 20 and 25 for middle to upper class white women in places like in the UK and stuff. And but courting as early as 15 or 16. So even by this very unacademically sound Google search, it seems as though
asking Grok.
Yeah, it seems as though yes, even back in the 1800s in England, marriage, or maybe as young as 12, maybe, if there was consent provided by the guardians. But he's still cutting it pretty fine there with an 11-year-old.
No, but this is 11-year-olds typically can't get pregnant, which is why I'm just a bit confused that she just has a child. The course of pregnancy, which is not known to be particularly comfortable, it's just not mentioned. It's never mentioned that she's pregnant.
I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt and say that in her head, it was like 4 or 5 years later.
Okay, so we've gone way in the future. Irene is no longer at like 11 or 12. Okay. Anyway.
Hopefully, or this all just happened within, or like on the honeymoon, they conceived when she was like 11 and a half. And then by the time she's like 13,
she had a slow pregnancy.
Yeah.
2-year gestation. Yeah, and so Irene is now sick, and Fever talks about Oscar Otwell, her beloved tutor, to Sir John, about how much he resents John and Lady Dilworth, and mentions a letter from Oscar Otwell hidden in a cavity in her jewel case. And Sir John finds the letter where Oscar professes his love for Irene, Irene says that she was planning to run away with Oscar, that she hates John. So John starts to hate Irene. He tells Rachel about Irene's infidelity. And then, in a plot point that I thought was going to go somewhere and ended up not going anywhere, he unlocks this previously locked up room and shows it to Rachel and says, in this room, one of his ancestors, a woman born, and I quote, imbecile, was murdered by her ward, Hector Wade, when she was 36 years old. 2 other ancestors of John's had lived in this room and were also killed or killed themselves. This doesn't go anywhere. I thought there'd be, is there a family curse or something going on because all of these people are dying in this room? No, it's just not mentioned again. Amanda, one night when she was writing this, just thought, oh, hey, this is something cool that could happen. And then just didn't pursue it.
Was the implication that that's the room in which they kept Irene?
No, because Irene was kept there. And I thought, maybe she'll go crazy in here or something will happen that references the at least 3 of John's ancestors who were killed in this room.
Like a haunting or something interesting.
Just anything. But it's just not mentioned again.
It's just a room she gets locked in.
Yeah. She's locked in a room and it's not nice. Don't get me wrong. I'm not sure what the backstory of the room's really doing here, beyond making me even more confused, which, again, she's a master of disorientation.
Yeah. She just throws it in there, just foreshadows something that just never comes about.
I love that she's both got extremely heavy-handed foreshadowing and extremely heavy-handed red herrings. You don't know where this book's going to go. She could go anywhere. And then suddenly you just jump forward and Irene's been imprisoned for a year. And she's trying to get in contact with Marjorie Mason, her beloved maid, whom just hasn't been mentioned yet in the story. She just appears.
Just all of a sudden.
So you have a beloved maid, who might help. And Irene's staring out a window at a figure that she thinks is Marjorie Mason and lowers a note to Marjorie. I don't know why it took a year for this to happen, but it just did. It did. Maybe Irene's still a child and needed to grow enough to reach the window.
This 40-year-old man groomed an 11-year-old, married her, had a child with her, presumably in her early teens, and then locked her in a room for a year. What the fuck?
No, and this is why another man, and we don't know how old Otwell is. I think
it's actually a pretty dark story.
I think he's younger than John, but he was also grooming her. He was also writing letters to her saying, "Don't get married to John. Run away with me."
Yep. And then
presumably while she was pregnant as
Rachel,
as a child.
Exactly. Yeah. And then this Rachel Hyde character is assisting the psycho 40-year-old child marriage person to lock away a kid in a room.
While Marjorie Mason, the beloved maid, is trying to help her escape so she can go to Oscar, the other guy who's been grooming her.
And Marjorie Mason's approach is just to kind of walk around in front of the window for like a year at the same time. Just very persistent. Doesn't really have anything better
Just really
to do.
take the initiative there by staring at the window until Irene gets tall enough that she can look out.
Maybe give her a couple of years, put her a couple of inches. This actually like turned into a really disturbing story.
I was not aware
that
of
we've figured it out.
Irene's age. I just assumed she was maybe 20.
No, 11 summers it said.
Shit. This makes the book much more unpleasant.
Puts a whole new angle on it for sure.
Yeah.
It was already pretty unpleasant.
It was already bizarre. But okay, so Irene makes a series of very impulsive decisions in this book. Where I was initially, my first reading, when I didn't catch the 11 summers thing, I thought, well, you're just a dumbass. But now it's like, well, no, you just have no executive function because you're literally a child.
And you're literally being manipulated and stuff by adults who have an extra 30 years on you. And essentially being like sold off by your adopted parents to try to save they've essentially, in fact, that also makes the Dilworths look really bad because they basically just sold off an 11-year-old to a rich 40-year-old dude because they wanted that like financial security. So you're also talking about child trafficking as well.
I think they wanted financial security for her. Maybe the Dilworths are maybe their heart's in the right place. They wanted her to be
all
cared
these
for.
characters are pretty sketchy at this point, Jack.
Yeah. And also, given that there's often not much continuity in how characters behave, the Dilworths could just flip at a moment's notice.
Yeah.
Anyway, on the subject of grooming, Marjorie Mason delivers a letter from Oscar to Irene, and I just want to read it out. Dearest Lady Dunfern, you may well guess my gross astonishment on receipt of your long-looked-for note. Irene has given a note to Marjorie Mason, who gave it to Oscar, who's now sent her a letter, which I'm reading out. So I continue. My heart bleeds for you, and believe me, no stone shall be left unturned until your release from that heathenish cell of woe shall be proclaimed. Often have I looked for an answer to my letters from you, but alas, in vain. I began to be convinced that something must have driven your love for me into hate. I am further surprised that my uncle, who purchased Dilworth Estate and who permanently resides at the castle with his wife and daughters, never alluded in any way in his letters to me to your retirement, as it were, from public life. His answers to my many questions concerning you he entirely evaded. Wait. His answers to my many questions concerning you, so he evaded his own questions.
Uncle evaded his questions.
His answers to my many questions concerning you, he entirely evaded.
The uncle evaded Oscar's questions about Irene.
No, but then it would be, my questions concerning you, he entirely evaded. But his answers to my many questions concerning you, he entirely evaded. So he's evading his answers. Wait.
She's trying to say that his answers were evasive. What she's trying to say is that he was evading.
His answers to my many questions.
She didn't execute the sentence very well, but I think that's what she meant.
No, I think I know what she means. It's just
what she actually said.
She's saying something very different. His answers to my many questions concerning you, he entirely evaded. Okay, I'm just going to leave that to the side. And never having had an opportunity of a personal... Can you imagine getting this letter and reading it over and over again and going, Oscar, what the fuck are you saying to me?
You're supposed to be my tutor.
And never having had an opportunity of a personal interview with him since I entered Chitworth College, I unfortunately have been debarred from rendering long since the aid you now seek. Your suggestion shall undoubtedly have my prompt attention, and I'll now say no more until I rejoice in your freedom. Ever your loving, Oscar. I also would like to say she keeps introducing named characters who are just never brought up again, and so it makes it really hard to know whom you're supposed to be focusing on, because there are a number of characters who are named who'll just disappear. And you don't know if they're gone for good, or maybe they're going to appear again in 50 pages, or maybe they're going to become, at least for the next few chapters, significant like Marjorie. This is so confusing. It's really, really confusing. Anyway, so Oscar's been teaching at a college, I think Chitworth College, and he's given leave because he's so sorrowful. He's really, really upset about Irene. Irene is also, we are told, now she's courageous and resourceful. She's just been kind of passive up till now, but we're told she's courageous and resourceful. And she escapes. So what's the brilliant escape plan? Marjorie pretends to be sick and asks Rachel to be allowed to go to her room early to rest. And Rachel says yes. And remember, up till now, we just keep getting told that Rachel is a tyrant. This is one of the only times we see Rachel doing anything. And she's just kind of nice. So anyway, Marjorie takes the key to Irene's room from Rachel's room and enters Irene's room. And Irene just takes ages to wake up. She takes like 10 minutes to wake up. I don't know if she's trying to build tension here or something. It's just really strange. Irene will not wake up. Anyway. She wakes up, then she just faints. And Marjorie carries her outside to Oscar. And she's rescued. And I want to read out this section. So I recall Jim Tice in the Eye of Argon was really good at describing eyes. He had so many different descriptions for eyes. He couldn't just call an eye an eye. He just kept coming up with really odd terms for them. Amanda McKittrick Ross might have outdone Jim Tice. So I quote, so this is Irene has been rescued and she's with Oscar. The rescued form now opened her eyes, and suddenly a convulsive twitch shook her feeble frame, casting her heavily laden orbs of blinded brilliancy around the cosy, well-lighted room. Had not to be informed by anyone what had happened, she gasped, "Thank heaven, I'm safe." Orbs of blinded brilliancy is a wonderful
that hits hard.
Describe eyes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Irene's safe. I'm pretty sure Rachel finds out that Marjorie and Irene are gone when she comes to bring Rachel dinner in bed because Rachel's sick. Sorry, because Marjorie is sick or said she's sick. And Rachel, having taken on Marjorie's shifts and let her go to bed early and bringing her dinner, we are still told is terrible, an awful person. So, things move really quickly now. So, John finds out that Irene's gone. He finds out pretty quickly where she is, that she's with Oscar. For some reason, he just doesn't pursue her. Or it's said that he's pursuing her, but he also knows where she is. And so he's just pursuing her willfully, ineffectually. Actually, it makes his character kind of more interesting if he knows where she is and he's expending a lot of energy in trying to find her, but intentionally doesn't go to the place where he knows she is. I just don't get it. Anyway, John fires Rachel and a footman, Tom Hepworth. Tom has been introduced and is said to be wonderful and loyal and stuff. But John specifically fires these two, his most faithful servants, because Irene escaped. John is, however, and we're told repeatedly, really wonderful. He's a great guy. Even though he also is kind of acting like a child. Okay, my child bride, whom I impregnated and locked in a room, escaped.
And so I fired my most loyal.
Yeah, so I'm going to fire my most loyal.
But he's a really good guy.
Yeah.
he's actually got a heart of gold.
He's got a heart of gold. He's just having a hard time imprisoning his child bride, whom he knocked up when she was in her early teens.
Yeah. Heart of gold.
Anyway, Irene's been with Oscar for a few months now, and she's unhappy because he's poor. Irene convinces Oscar to sell Audley Hall, which is his home. Maybe it's just Melbourne house prices talking, but it just feels hard to say that this guy is in absolute penury and he owns a hall.
Yeah, what qualifies as a hall, I suppose? But when I hear Penury Hall, that sounds like he's doing all right.
It sounds all right, yeah.
Does he have a mortgage on it? Or does he own it outright? Because that'd be pretty...
I don't know. I just want to read out the section when... their dire circumstances are described. It was now that the heated passion of youth's folly became abated, as Oscar was beginning to near his purse's wrinkled bottom, and failing in his strenuous efforts to secure a tutorship, was smartly made to feel that he must visit a land of strangers, where height of ability and depth of character were alike unquestioned. It was at this stage, too, that Lady Dunfern was made to taste of the dish of fanciful wish, in which she often dipped her slender fingers to sprinkle her body of dishonesty. She got time now to brood over her actions of silly execution and hatch them with heated hunger. The orphan, the pampered, the honoured was at this period the deluded, the mocked, the hungered.
I don't know what she's saying.
I think she regrets her decision.
Yeah. It's just there's something really distracting about all the alliteration.
Yeah.
It actually throws me off.
It's like you're trying to focus on a story someone's telling while someone else is just banging symbols next to your head.
Or the rhyme. Occasionally there'll just be rhymes, and she'll do these couples or triples where it'll be alliteration, or rhyme schema for no other reason, just a fairly mundane fact that she's saying. Why did you chuck that triple in there?
And then
the delusion, the foiled, the foiled.
I also like calling her, instead of calling her hungry, she is the hungered. and then Oscar decides to take her to New York, and the timing here is really fast. He just like all of a sudden, oh shit, there's the other. Okay, another plot point, which is out of nowhere and really sudden and a crazy coincidence, is Oscar sells his home. Okay, so all these things happen super quickly. Irene convinces him to sell his home. He finds a buyer. The buyer's name is Major Iddesleigh. This man had a brother who is now dead, who had a single daughter who was put up for adoption. And so who might that daughter be? I don't know. And now with that money, Oscar has bought tickets to New York. He and Irene are at the docks almost immediately after selling Audley Hall to Major Iddesleigh. Then they go to New York, settle there, get married. And this is all so fast. This is all just at the end of chapter 14. We go warp speed.
Some people are just a ball of chaos, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Is that Irene?
Just crash through somebody else's life. And when I've seen people like this come into other people's lives, I immediately think, all right, I've got to stay away from them. They are a wrecking ball. We'll just smash. Irene sounds like a little bit of a wrecking ball.
She's a bit of a liability. Even if she is the Southern beauty.
Your house.
Even if she was so precocious as to be the Southern beauty at 11 years of age, she's not worth it. She will ruin your life.
Sell your hall. Like it must have. It doesn't necessarily have to have been a mansion, but it must have been at least reasonably nice. It would have been a nice place, 4 or 5 bedrooms, nice big, living space. Probably 2 stories. Maybe a nice garden.
It's probably fine. What are they going to get? What are they going to get in New York?
Yeah,
that they wouldn't have gotten with a house that they had, and with so she keeps saying, "I'm so scared that my husband will find us," but he knows where they are. He's known where they've been for ages and just hasn't. Well, no, he's done things. He's been searching for them, knowing where they are, but not searching in the place where he knows that they are.
I know who your lover is.
I know where he lives.
I know where he lives.
I know that he is still living there because I'm friends with his employer who said, yes, Oscar is still at his house with your wife.
With your 13-year-old wife. You in prison for a year.
And the son she gave birth to, he does come back, but he's just not mentioned in this part.
At all, again, you just see a brief scene where it's like, he was born so that she can set up later.
Yeah.
Him being alive.
Yeah, that's called setting up plot points.
This does it so well. Okay, so...
There are so many sections I could read out.
New York, that's right.
Yeah, we're in New York.
Let's go.
We've got this whole
15,
section about how terrible Rachel Hyde is. And and then Tom Hepworth. He's so distraught at having been let go that he dies. He just dies. Sir John, who's such a good guy, who just fired one of his loyal servants in a fit of rage, just caused his death. Tom was so distraught he died. I quote, Tom Hepworth, whose race was nearly run when leaving Dunfern Mansion, took refuge in the home of Miss Durand, his sister, who lived only a short distance from where he had spent more than a third part of his existence. A few months only elapsed whilst under her roof when he was seized in a fit of apoplexy, terminating in a few hours a life of usefulness and blameless bearing. The shock of his sudden demise, when conveyed to his master, whom he revered, brought on a severe attack of hemorrhage, under which Sir John Dunfern now lay prostrate. Also, characters in this book just keep getting sick and then getting better. This one actually does kill Tom. I would like to note, apoplexy is a very vague term. It's probably referring to hemorrhagic stroke here, which, yeah, that could well kill you. I like that Tom was so distraught at not being employed anymore by John that he had a stroke.
Yeah, to say that he was still pretty young.
It's
30 or something.
Okay,
maybe?
we've established that characters' ages are not what they seem, given that I read this entire book under the impression that Irene was much older than she actually is.
So, but at the very least,
I don't trust my intuitions with Tom. I thought Tom was older, but so he's worked for more than a third of his life with Sir John, and it sounds like he'd been employed by Sir John for quite a while. So presumably he's not that young.
Okay, well, let's say regardless of age. I mean, didn't it just say that he was youthful in that paragraph?
Yeah. He was great. So he couldn't have been that old. He couldn't have been that young. Okay, look, unless you have some sort of underlying condition, it is weird to have a hemorrhagic stroke under the age of like 75 or 80. It's an odd thing to happen to a young person.
Because given the nature of Sir John Dunfern and his regard or lack thereof for child rights, for all we know, John could have been 15. He could have been 15.
He got
or
Tom
something.
when he was 4.
Yeah. And now the kid's, I don't know, 12 or so.
Which
he's just been made destitute by this guy that he looks up to as a father figure.
Amanda McKittrick Ross has set things up where she's between a rock and a hard place, because either Tom is old enough where a hemorrhagic stroke makes sense, or he's young enough to be a useful employee, but you got to pick one. I also like the idea of John, when he learns that Tom has died, having a hemorrhage, like he just starts bleeding everywhere. It's not even said, like, where's he hemorrhaging from? Where's the blood coming from? Doesn't matter. He's bleeding. He's bleeding, and now he's sick.
Where's he bleeding from? It's just from all these orifices. Just has a bowl of
starts spraying blood out of every orifice.
It's like,
where's he bleeding from?
Did you ever watch?
Why did he start bleeding when he learned? Okay, he's not depressed. He's not sad. But he learns that his loyal servant, whom he just fired, is died. No, he just starts bleeding.
Did you ever watch Kung Pao Enter the Fist?
Yeah.
It's like some super just head explodes, or the OG Arnold Schwarzenegger Total Recall.
Oh, was that where you had the like
explodes?
Yeah, and then you had at the end of that the plastic Arnie face, who's getting bigger and bigger and bigger when he's exposed to the Mars atmosphere.
That is John.
I loved in that movie too that Arnie's problem being exposed to the surface of Mars wasn't freezing. It was
head exploding.
My face is going to get bigger for a bit. Anyway,
I would love Irene Iddesleigh to be made into a film.
I feel like you'd lose a lot of the magic of it though, because certain things like the age of characters would be declared in how
who would be the
perfect?
You know who the perfect person to make this Irene Iddesleigh film?
Tommy Wiseau. Tommy Wiseau needs to make this. He needs to do it.
Just the greatest filmmaker of all time with the greatest author of the Victorian period.
Either that or I'm not sure how his name is pronounced, like Uwe Boll.
What did he do?
Oh, he's made like 1 billion movies and they are all terrible and batshit insane.
I have no idea how to spell this person's name.
UWE, I think. And then BOLL is his surname. I've never said his name out loud.
What movies has this guy made? He made a Far Cry movie. I loved Far Cry back in the day. That's so cool. Oh, he made House of the Dead. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, he's made so many films. That's crazy.
I think Tommy Wiseau would be better.
Yeah,
he's got that ear for dialogue.
Hey, Mark.
I did not hit her. I did not. Wonderful film. Actually, it's good that you bring that up because I got a similar feeling reading this book as I did watching The Room. It's actually maybe the piece of art closest to Irene Iddesleigh is The Room. Actually, no, this is The Room.
It really is. It is the spirit animal.
Yeah,
the same kindred spirits
animating this novel as that film.
Just kind of persistent confusion, bad dialogue.
That persistent sense of a strange dream, just a dream logic operating at all times. Anyway, I do want to read out the description of John's mental state upon hearing of the death of Tom. Remember, this is while he's hemorrhaging severely everywhere, just spraying blood all over the room. Maybe not. Maybe he's bleeding internally. Not sure how that would happen either. It's actually quite hard to follow. This is a particularly distracting section. He was tempted to invest in the polluted stocks of magnified extension, and when their banks seemed swollen with rotten gear, gathered too often from the winds of wilful wrong, how the misty dust blinded his sense of sight and drove him through the field of fashion and feeble effeminacy, which he once never meant to tread, landing him on the slippery rock of smutty touch, to wander into its hidden cavities of ancient fame, there to remain a blinded son of injustice and unparalleled wrong! Exclamation mark! All these thoughts seized the blighted protector of the late Colonel Iddesleigh's orphan daughter, and we didn't know that it was a Colonel Iddesleigh until now, I think, either. Anyway,
so was the other one a general? That's her uncle?
He was some guy in the military.
Right, okay.
At least we know that her real father was pretty high ranking too. Anyway, of the late Colonel Iddesleigh's orphan daughter, and being gradually augmented by many others of private and public importance, rose like a tumour of superfluous matter and burst asunder on receiving the last blow relative to poor old Tom Hepworth. Poor old Tom Hepworth, you fucking fired him for no reason. Because you're having a tantrum because your 15-year-old that you locked in a room got away. But John is a great guy.
Heart of gold.
He's We've all... Let he who is without sin cast the first stone is what I say. We've all made mistakes. And Sir John made a lot of mistakes, like impregnating a child and locking her in a room. But but he's feeling really bad because poor old Tom's dead. And he's hemorrhaging severely in bed. While he's just ruminating on this injustice. Oh, but by the way, Hugh, John and Irene's son, is now 6. Wait, so Irene's at least 17 now.
Yeah, at least. Or 18, maybe.
Well, mate, yeah.
Give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, so things have moved really quickly. It's just another point of disorientation in this book. She will sometimes just say, by the way, I'm giving you an objective measure of time, something like the age of a person, and have otherwise not given much indication as to just how much time has passed. It's just, you blink, it's, we're 6 years in the future now.
And no hint as to what has happened in the last... Wait, so does that mean for 6 years he's known where... Or is she in New York already?
She's in New York now.
Okay, right.
And she and Oscar crossed the Atlantic in a sentence. And the Atlantic's not an insignificant body of water. It takes time to get across in a boat. It's not like they've just left from... like from London Heathrow Airport and flown to New York. It's
a bit of a slog.
Yeah. But
in the 1860s.
They are there. I don't know if John is aware that they're in New York. I don't think he knows. No, he can't. He doesn't know that they're in New York. Because later in the book he's told that they're in New York and they got married and he gets sick again. Which is just what he does when he finds out something about Irene. He just gets... He just starts bleeding everywhere.
Pretty kind of, what's the word? Sort of fragile frame.
He's a sensitive man.
He's a sensitive fella.
He's a sensitive bloke. Found out his missus, married another bloke, New York. This would be much better if it were set in Australia and everyone had really strong upper accents. Irene Iddesleigh. Anyway. Yeah, Irene marries Oscar. And Hugh looks at like Irene. I liked this detail. Hugh looks a lot like Irene. And John manfully doesn't let this outwardly affect him, although it is really bothering him. And it does make him sick at times. So, chapter 16 sees Oscar just change. Granted, okay, up to this point, Oscar's been a bit of a blank slate character. We do know certain things about him, like he was the private tutor of a child and was trying to marry her for much of that time. So, I guess we have a sense of what he's like as a person, maybe not so trustworthy.
He's the sort of person who would allow...
I wouldn't hire him as a babysitter, for example.
A teenager to convince him to sell his hall in England and elope to New York in the middle of the 1860s.
He has an artistic temperament. He's impulsive. Let's put it that way. He married the child that he'd been hitting on for years. She said... Hey, mate, why don't you sell your ancestral home? And he went...
Because we're slightly too broke.
Yeah, and he went, you know what? I'll do you one better. With the money from the home that I sold in like a day, I'm going to move us to New York.
Where we know nobody.
Nobody.
And I have no marketable skills.
No, he does have marketable skills. We've been told a few times. He's never demonstrated this. We've been told a few times that he's really great at writing.
But isn't he like a tutor who's like is unable to get tutoring work, basically?
Yeah, so this is the problem with, I guess this is showing and telling. So, okay, I don't subscribe to the, show, don't tell. I think you should show and tell. It's
a little bit of both here and there.
Do a bit of both.
Yeah.
The problem is when you're showing and telling things that are really different to each other is where you can run into problems. So yes, we're told that he's a brilliant tutor and a brilliant author. As you noted, he hasn't been able to find work as a tutor
for long enough that his 15-year-old stolen prisoner is complaining about it.
Yeah. Okay, maybe in his defense, she's used to the finer things because Sir John is loaded. He's got tons of cash. So maybe she was just used to the finer things.
So you let a child who has an inflated sense of like lifestyle come into your life and then start bossing you around about your finances.
You have a child who's for a significant portion of her life, a serious percentage of her life, has been locked in one room.
Yeah,
probably not developing the sort of financial acumen that might be necessary for making major life decisions like, let's sell my house and move to New York.
The daughter of a colonel who then grew up with some people who had 3 mansions and then married like gentry and then spent a year locked in a room is not somebody I would typically take financial advice off.
How long was she locked in a room?
About a year, yeah. About a year.
Was it just a year?
It was a year, yeah.
Okay.
And this guy has such poor judgment that he let this teenager stand over him like that. And then eloped to New York. I don't feel one bit of remorse for Oscar.
No. And then in New York, he just starts spending what little money they have on trifles. It's like spending it on stupid shit. He becomes a drunk out of nowhere. So okay, we've established that he has terrible judgment.
He has very, very bad judgment.
Yeah. Terrible judgment.
Irene's got pretty bad judgment.
She has
the excuse of being a child, though.
A ball of chaos. She has the excuse of a troubled upbringing.
Troubled upbringing, yeah. Groomed by 2 men.
Repeatedly groomed, trafficked.
And imprisoned as a child. So she's got an excuse to be, have pretty poor judgment. I think we can give her a pass.
So I'll let her off. Yes, she has appalling judgment.
She's effectively got complex childhood PTSD. Like, she's not making good decisions.
She's had a pretty traumatic childhood and has never had the opportunity to develop just like any sort of sound judgment. So I'll give Irene a pass. Like she has a reason for being just a ball of chaos.
But this Oscar fella,
the men in her life, like this Oscar guy. This Oscar guy, okay, in New York, he's been working at Waketown Public School. He gets fired.
Probably because he's grooming some kid there.
It's not said why he gets fired, but given his past behaviour, I wouldn't let him near children.
He didn't have working with children's checks back then.
Shout out to, what was it, the Labor government in Victoria who put into place working with children's checks? Or is that federal? Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. It's good.
I don't know. Shout out to whichever government in Australia did that, because Oscar would have had a hard time getting his
Oscar would have rightfully had a hard time getting employment. So I don't feel sorry for Oscar.
Yeah. And Marjorie Mason, the person who freed Irene and delivered her to Oscar, came with them to New York. She married someone and deserted Irene.
Wait.
Fucking left her with Oscar.
That's right.
I quote,
fucking confusing.
Marjorie Mason, who just spent 12 months under Oscar's roof, was fortunate in securing a husband whose calling kept her during her short lifetime aloof from the imaginative pinches of the uncertain future. So she met a nice guy, having delivered Irene, the child bride who was locked in a room and impregnated, to the man who was also trying to impregnate her as a child. Found a man and deserted her. Marjorie would have been. She was living with Oscar and Irene. She would have been fully aware that Oscar is a fuck up, had no money, was drunk spending his money on stupid shit, and looked at that situation and went, Okay, no.
She
maybe
abandoned this teenage girl.
Okay, so wait. Here's a generous reading of Marjorie Mason. She saw an out. She'd been living in this chaos because Oscar and Irene are both such chaotic people. Marjorie had been with them for 12 months. Maybe she saw a stable man and went, all right, I'm marrying this guy as soon as I can. I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it worked. It said that she had a short life, so
That was never
that's never followed up on. But Marjorie found stability.
She made the right choice for her.
Yeah. She put
once in
herself
her
first.
life. Why did she go to New York with Oscar and
Because
Irene?
everybody in this book makes bad decisions. There's a baseline level of
And how did she get the funds
of
to
executive dysfunction.
Because she was just a servant, right? Did Oscar pay for?
Why was she
Marjorie
sticking around? What was Oscar paying her with? Or was she just there for the love of the game?
Don't know. But like,
Why
what was
she
her
moved to
motivation
a different
for?
continent?
Presumably, she didn't know anybody in New York other than Irene and Oscar.
Other than the two most trustworthy people in the world. Okay, so she landed on her feet. So
Like-
I'm in two minds.
And she couldn't have been.
Marjorie maybe had some duty of care to stick up for Irene because Irene cannot take care of herself.
No.
She's never developed those skills.
Maybe she felt a duty of care. Yeah,
But-
that's fair enough.
But okay, maybe Marjorie gave it a really good go. It's like a year is a long time to be living with these people. Saw the opportunity for stability and took it. So actually, no. Maybe I'm mostly on Marjorie's side, like 60-40 on Marjorie's side. She...
But I feel like she didn't necessarily have a motivation to leave other than feeling a duty of care. Because, I mean, if somebody came to her and said, why did you get fired by Sir John Dunfern? And she goes, well, he had kept his teenage wife locked in a room for 12 months and I helped her get out of that room. Most people would be like, oh, that's fair enough that you did that. That's a reasonable thing. In fact, Dunfern sounds like a fucking psycho.
No, he's a really good guy.
Why don't you come have a job with me? Like, I'm sure she would have been fine finding another employer.
She didn't have to go to America either. She could have just...
Didn't have to go to America.
Go to like Scotland or Ireland. Like, there's plenty of space in the UK as well. She didn't have to go to America.
Wasn't this at the time that they were like getting really hardcore into all of that like overpopulation stuff in the UK, sending people? Oh no, it was a bit later. Maybe. It was a bit later. Anyways, yeah, fucking New York's as far away. I mean, it's New York, baby.
Should have gone to Australia.
City of Lights. Hey. Even back then.
Yeah. She heard that song. It was by Jay-Z.
Yeah.
Every song by Jay-Z is just about New York, but she was just listening she was just listening to a lot of New York rap.
What is it? Yeah, that real like OG Biggie Smalls and stuff type rap. Bebop. That New York bebop rap. She rolls up into like Times Square wearing like some sick Adidas shoes. Irene and Oscar up in this bitch.
Yeah, all three of them just dressed in FUBU.
Thick English accents.
Yeah. So a quote. This is a pivotal moment in the plot. Next morning mended matters little for Oscar Otwell's wife. Still raging with drunken horror, he lavished upon her torrents of insinuations, which she found impossible to overlook, and which forced her to take refuge in the house of the Reverend Bertram Edgar nearby. This man of true piety, at whose church she had occasionally worshipped, extended the refuge she presently implored, and proved instrumental in securing for her the position of governess in a nobleman's family some miles distant. I would like to question which nobles there are in the United States of America. I mean,
in New York.
The New York nobility. I guess I accept that there's functionally a nobility. I just didn't think they were titled.
Maybe
Anyway.
that's her. It's culturally she's translating that as actually, they just don't like a beer brewery or something. She's like, nobility.
Anyway, so what happens is it's the sort of behavior that we've come to expect from all of these people. So Irene's run away. Oscar just ditches his house. I think he sells it. And just keeps spending his money stupidly. But he's pursuing Irene, and he wants to take her back to England. He wants to get back home. However, he can't find her. And his various inquiries regarding her whereabouts proved vain as the vanishing shadow of Venus. And finally, don't know what that means. And finally, when completely overcome with sober thoughts of his riotous conduct towards the loving and faithful object of his choice, who had risked so much for him, he cursed his very existence. Has she shown herself to be loving and faithful? I guess. Sort of. Anyway. Oscar goes a few weeks without Irene and drowns himself. He just fucking kills himself because he can't bear to be away from her.
He must have realised how poor his decision making was.
He just drowns himself.
I've fucked everything up in my life for years on end.
And Oscar's suicide note. So Oscar can't find Irene, but the police find his suicide note and just find her immediately.
He's like, dearest Irene. Oh yeah, that Irene.
Yeah, that one.
There's only one Irene in all the state of New York.
I think I'll read out his suicide note in full. It's pretty good. I quote, "Dearest Irene and wife, should ever this reach your length, I trust you will pardon me for the rash act I am about to commit. Since the morning you left me at Shandon College, my sorrow has been greater than my present frame of mind can well support. I, therefore, have decided on ending my days of starvation by hiding forever beneath the glassy surface of Alton Lake to shield my wicked body from further inflicting upon you the wrongs I have perpetuated in the past and for which I am grievously tormented. Dearest Irene, I hope you, in your past great warmth of devotion for me, your poor tutor and husband, will forgive my late ungentlemanly conduct in striking you so cowardly on the eve of my downfall, and thereby breaking the confidence you reposed in me for such a lengthened period of our existence. From what I know of your noble character, I have every faith in your forgiveness, and rest assured I never mean to face death without imploring you to rectify, if ever in your power, the wrong you accomplished, partly at my request, in breaking the holy cord of union which bound you during your natural existence to Sir John Dunfern, and again uniting it under foul auspices. Had I been so fortunate as to secure you first of all, my conscience certainly would at this moment be both clear and unclouded. But feeling persuaded I have robbed that nobleman who now possibly is pining for separation from a world of shame and sorrow underneath the lordly roof of Dunfern Mansion, I am positively convinced, under such dangling dishonour, that never more can this world of sin extend to me the comfort I in vain have tried to seek. Awake then, my beloved, to whom I attach not the slightest blame, to a sense of feeling and justice, and go, I implore you, and cast yourself at the feet of him and beg his forgiveness, who loved you with a love unspeakable, who severed nearly all his self-indulgence with the instrument of intensity, and hesitated not to lavish it upon the head of her to whom I offer my last advice. Then shall you meet the messenger, death, not with shrinking fear, like me, but daring bravery. Of your present position or abode I am totally unaware, but, dearest wife, I trust your race of penury is almost run, that your latter years may be crowned with Christian fortitude and ease, and freed from the thorny dart of the wicked, in whose grave I must soon lie unwept. Goodbye forever, from your affectionate Oscar. I like that even when he's contemplating suicide, he can't help but alliterate and rhyme. He's not, he just can't help himself.
Yeah, everybody in Irene Iddesleigh in McKittrick's world speaks the same.
Yeah.
She actually doesn't. Now that I think about it, the dialogue is all the same between the characters. Like they don't
there's no
have any distinctive dialogue
which
between them.
makes me think that this is set in a parallel universe. This isn't. It's not purely realist fiction. It's set in a parallel universe, which is exactly the same, except for the manner in which people communicate, and everyone is communicating in this way. Like, this is not unusually purple prose in the context of Irene Iddesleigh's world. This is completely normal.
Could you imagine just how long Parliament would take?
Nothing would happen.
Nothing ever happens. Martin Luther King's speeches take like 4 times as long.
Yeah. And our episodes take 12 hours.
Up from 11.
Yeah. And anyway, so Irene decides to go back to England and ask for Sir John's forgiveness because she's realised that he's actually a pretty good guy.
Heart of gold.
While she's at the docks, she meets Lord Dilworth just out of nowhere. Lady Dilworth is dead. Lord Dilworth is working as a clerk for $500 a year. And Irene just says, nice to have seen you, and goes back to England.
Could you imagine that? It's been years and years and years since you've seen your adopted daughter. And she's just like, all right,
see ya.
Right then.
Yeah, I'm going back to England. So it's in the notes for chapter 17, I just have, in quotation marks, life's ploughing changes. Just a turn of phrase she used that I really liked. John is still keeping the story of Irene from Hugh, their daughter. And in the space of a few sentences, John goes from being fine to unsettled to deathly ill and unable to speak. And then he just can't speak for 6 weeks.
Known to do, let's be honest.
Yeah.
It wasn't out of character at this point.
Yeah. It's not out of character. John becoming inexplicably extremely ill out of nowhere. Previously, he just started bleeding everywhere. This time he can't speak. Okay. Condensing all of these signs and symptoms into one etiology. Perhaps it was a stroke. Perhaps he too had a hemorrhagic stroke when it said, he had a severe hemorrhage. One from which he recovered with no apparent deficits, which would be abnormal, but maybe that's what happened. And maybe he's had another stroke. And that's why he hasn't been able to speak. But he recovers from this one too. Maybe his brain is very, very, very resistant to disrupted blood flow. I don't know. He recovers like a champion, though. Anyway, John spends his last words. He suddenly can speak again. He tells Hugh about Irene's misadventures. I'm not sure how he's conveying them. Do you think he tells his son, "Hey mate, I knocked up a 12-year-old and then locked her in a room, and that's your mum, and then she ran away"? Do you reckon he left all of that aside? He was like, "Hey Hugh, yeah, your mum was 25 to 30 when I met her."
Yeah, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, somewhere in the red, 25 to 35. She was fully grown.
Your mum, who was an adult when we met.
Your adult mother, when I met her as an adult. He tells Hugh everything. And given the fact that Hugh is he's completely fine, he takes his dad's side in this, as we will learn shortly. There are a few options. One, Hugh grew up in the same household as John and has absorbed some of John's proclivities, and as such, doesn't regard it as abnormal that you would marry and impregnate a tweenager. Or he's very understanding and forgives his dad's trespasses, or his dad just didn't tell him that part of the story. Could go either way. I don't know, but
to
whatever.
be fair, the servants that could have contradicted him, he did fire, or one of them,
No,
Marjorie ran away.
He has a big household. He's
That's
still
true.
got
There's
plenty
other
of servants.
Maybe
who
he
were
fired
there.
everybody.
He just fired the most loyal and helpful servants.
Yeah. So Hugh, as far as we know, is in the dark as to. Could you imagine when Irene came back and Hugh sees her? He's like, "Whoa, you're like way younger than Like, what's your skincare routine? You should be like 50 now."
But presumably at some point, Hugh asked about his mum. At some point during his entire life.
Yeah.
So there was the part of his life when his mum was locked in a room. When I don't know, where's mum gone? She's away.
she went to get a pack of smokes.
Yeah, went to get a pack of smokes and never came back. And then later, when she was in New York, he just didn't ask after her. We're told that Hugh's great. Like his dad, he's a great guy. Which, at least in the context of this book, fills me with suspicion. But anyway, Hugh's just been in the dark about his mum for his whole life. It was an immaculate conception, but from the male side. Anyway, John dies, and his last words to his son are these. "It may be yours to meet her face to face, ere she leaves this tabernacle of torment." But I'm assuming the tabernacle of torment is like this veil of tears, but through the crazy filter.
That's such a good metal name, like metal band name.
Yeah, I've started a blackened death metal band, Tabernacle of Torment.
Tabernacle of Torment.
That's to be released through Iron Bonehead Records. "But, my child, for my sake, avoid her cunning ways and works, and never allow her shelter underneath this roof she dishonoured and despised. And I trust God in his great mercy shall forgive her errors, and grant you the blessing of a father of love." I love this. It's God may forgive, but I don't. That bitch. He's telling his son, if you meet your mum, just know she's untrustworthy and I don't forgive her. I leave that to God.
Mm-hmm.
What a man. He's a great guy.
Young woman that I locked in a room for a year.
Yeah. God,
Against
John's
her
a
will.
great guy. Even with his last words, he was being a great guy.
Heart of gold.
Yeah. Yeah.
On his deathbed, he's still talking shit about a person that he imprisoned against their will.
Yeah, but he did find out that she was with her tutor and hemorrhaged everywhere. He's had a hard time with this too.
I hope hemorrhaging isn't a metaphor for anything.
Give him a break, Levi. He's had a really hard time. What about that time
being
he
really
found
rich?
out that Irene had married Oscar, and then he couldn't speak for 6 weeks until he rallied and told their son never to trust his mother, and died. Just left him with that.
Here we were thinking that simpery was a modern phenomenon.
Yeah.
In fact, we've got two dudes who have just had their lives ruined by
being in this dark polycule.
The dark polycule. Another pretty good metal name.
Polycule. Tabernacle of Torment's first album is Dark
Polycule. First studio album. Dark Polycule. It's just like, what would the album cover be? Like two grown men next to an 11-year-old girl. Actually, pretty fucked up. I hope nobody makes that album.
I really like
First track, Lolita.
Chapter 18 starts in such a good way. So, where lesser writers might say it was a dark and stormy night, Amanda McKittrick Ross says the night was dark and tempestuous.
Ah, lovely. Lovely. Beautiful.
Just everything is good. Anyway, Irene's back in England. Stays a few nights with the sister of Tom Hepworth, the guy who died, the guy who had a fit of apoplexy and died because he was so
distraught about being fired by
a good guy, Sir John.
Yeah.
And she goes to Dunfern Mansion to apologise to John and try to see Hugh, her child, whom she did abandon him and never made any effort to get in contact with him. Maybe, okay, taking Irene's side, maybe she was so traumatized that she just wanted to get away.
Yeah, I don't know if that's abandonment if you're running away from somebody who kept you in.
If you're running away from someone who knows exactly where you're living and just won't go to you.
And he could have taken Hugh, to see Irene at any point during that time.
Yeah. Okay, so Hugh is going to behave pretty callously, but I feel pretty bad for Hugh because he hasn't had a straightforward upbringing.
Yeah, he hasn't. And how many times has he been locked in his room from his behavior?
We don't know. I mean, his dad... when your parents say, if you continue behaving like this, I'm going to lock you in your room. When good guy Sir John says it, you take him really seriously because he'll keep you in there for a year.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
There you go. Maybe Hugh is very severely abused. Maybe he's got Stockholm syndrome.
I don't know. Okay, so there's never been any... Okay, so when it's come to Irene, Amanda McKittrick Ross has said that Sir John's a good guy, but he's behaved... he's been shown to behave pretty callously towards her. He's never been shown to be doing anything bad to Hugh.
Mm-hmm.
And has never been said to be doing anything bad to him either. So I'm going to assume he's been pretty good. Hugh's just grown up without a mum and has just shown no apparent interest in learning who gave birth to him either. I don't know. Look, he's the child of two pretty dysfunctional people. He's fighting his own battles. So this is when she finds out that John is dead. Gently ringing the bell, the door was attended by a strange face. Reverently asking to have an interview with Sir John Dunfern, how the death-like glare fell over the eyes of the disappointed as the footman informed her of his demise. "Madam, if you cast your eyes thence..." Here the sturdy footman pointed to the family graveyard lying quite adjacent and in which the offcast of effrontery had often trodden. And that's in square brackets for some reason. Everything else is... I think that's the one time there are square brackets. Anyway, it's an M dash and square brackets together. Yeah, this is very advanced. Anyway, you can with ease behold the rising symbol of death, which the young nobleman, Sir Hugh Dunfern, has lavishly and unscrupulously erected to his fond memory. I just love the idea of Sir Hugh Dunfern unscrupulously making a grave or commissioning a headstone for his dead dad. No, you're being lavish and unscrupulous. I just don't even know what that looks like. There's no indication that Hugh is poor, that he's breaking the bank on this. In fact, the opposite. He's said to be extravagantly wealthy. It's how crazy a mausoleum is he having to build for his dad for it to be an unscrupulous use of money?
He went full Timothy Dexter. Put a bunch of statues on top of it.
I've also got a section where the alliteration is going bonkers. So, Heavily laden with the garb of disappointment, did the wandering woman of wayward wrong retrace her footsteps from the door forever, and leisurely walked down the artistic avenue of carpeted care, never more to face the furrowed frowns of friends who in years gone by bestowed on her the praises of poetic powers.
You just don't understand, Jack. You just don't understand the genius.
She's going off. No, I do understand it. I love it. It's in some ways this works as a comic novel, or as a satirical novel for a certain type of overblown Victorian prose, but pushed so far that it just becomes its own thing. It's beyond satire.
Mm.
And anyway, Irene visits John's grave, and there's a poem written on it, and the poem is included in the book, and the poem is written in much less flowery language than all of the prose around. The poem is the poem is prosaic, and the prose is poetic in this book.
Mm.
And Hugh finds Irene at John's grave and just unloads on her. He just delivers this really scathing speech. The alliteration's rubbing off on me as well. A scathing speech, and his mother is just distraught. Obviously, her son denounces her before the grave of her husband. And so she runs away and goes to Audley Hall. Remember, this is the place that Oscar Otwell owned and then sold to her uncle. I also she's got a great term for windows. I quote, "Perceiving the yellow shutters firmly bolted against the light admitters of Audley Hall, she feared disappointment was also awaiting her. Light admitters instead of windows. Just call them windows. You don't need to call them light admitters." She doesn't need to call them light emitters, but she did, and
not?
The book is better for it.
Do you reckon she, in her head, she was thinking, "I'm going to start a new term for windows and those sorts of things. Like, these are such powerful terms, turn of phrase, that other people will start calling windows light emitters." It definitely wouldn't be trademarkable, because I guess it's just so descriptive. That is, in fact, what they do.
They are things that emit light. That is
into enclosed spaces.
Anyway,
instead of rooms.
She goes to Audley Hall and asks for Major Iddesleigh, and finds out that he's been dead for almost 12 years. So this actually gives us.
So her son
is Hugh 18? Because I think she left for New York when he was 6.
Yes. So he must be at least 18.
So he's 18. He'll be 18
like,
or 19, depending on the month in which he was born and when this is happening.
Yeah. So she must be in her early to mid 30s.
Man, she's
really young.
It's just so ridiculous how young she is. Okay, so no, she's an adult now. She's not a young adult. She's just an adult, but with the mind of a child, because she's just never really been able to grow up.
Yeah. There's very little character development in Irene, isn't there?
And that's right. So Sir John wrote Irene out of his will. He'd kept her in his will for ages because he's a really good guy. But then when he found out that she married Oscar, he wrote her out of it and then stopped being able to speak. And so Major Iddesleigh had also put Irene in his will, but then he kept searching for her and couldn't find her, and wrote her out of the will because he couldn't find her. So Sir John had Irene in his will, learned where she was and what she'd done in New York and wrote her out of it. He's living really close to Major Iddesleigh and knows people who know Major Iddesleigh, who wrote Irene out of his will because he didn't know where she was and he'd been searching for her. But so he just never asked Sir John where she was. That never happened. Or maybe Sir John never told him where she was. Because they must have had contact. They were living close to each other. Like,
yeah,
this was in walking distance.
So
for
uncle
12 years, they didn't talk about this?
Or if her uncle did ask, like, how hard was he looking?
Okay, no, so wait. This is the man who was searching for Irene while knowing exactly where she was. No, wait, no. So Sir John... Sir John was previously searching for her, knowing where she was. Major Iddesleigh searched for her for 12 years and never asked John where she was, or John never said.
Nobody else disclosed to...
For over a decade.
Yeah.
To the point where he wrote her out of his will. He was like, well, she must be dead.
Yeah. I don't buy it. I feel like it was a bit weak. Maybe he was just using that as a convenient excuse to get her out of the will. Maybe he knew full well she was in New York.
Like some of the... I keep coming back to it, but the executive functioning of people in this book is just really odd. They make some really strange decisions.
They make decisions that are very convenient for
yes
to kill the characters in the way that she wants to.
Yeah. Anyway, so Irene goes to Dilworth Castle and back to the summer house where she spent her youth and dies there of starvation. Now, I don't know how long she hadn't eaten for, so it's not... You can survive a long time without food. I guess it's not explicitly stated that Irene ate upon returning to England, in which case this could work.
But it could have taken a while.
It's also not stated exactly how long she spent in this summer house, but it's kind of implied that it was just overnight. Because remember, this is still taking place on the dark and tempestuous night. Or wait, or maybe... The timing's kind of hard to follow because you don't just die immediately from not eating if you don't eat for a night.
I wouldn't be surprised if McKittrick literally thought, it only takes a couple of days to die of starvation.
So Irene starves herself to death, but the time course is a bit weird. Anyway, she does that, and Hugh forswears women. Hugh goes MGTOW at the end of the book.
So MGTOWs and simps have been around since at least the 1850s.
Hugh might be the first MGTOW that we were... I mean, okay, no, there are probably men who forswore women before Hugh, the non-fictional character of Hugh Dunfern. But I like to think that MGTOW started with Hugh. And
at least as an identity.
That's it.
A tragic, harrowing story.
Yeah, a harrowing story.
A horrible, haunting, harrowing story of sadness and slithering snakes.
Slithering stealthily.
Slowly up a slope towards something.
Slow sludge snaking stealthily sprinkled. Yes. I would still recommend this book to a certain type of person. If a person can appreciate prose that is so insane that it becomes oddly engaging, then I would recommend this. For someone who just wants to read a novel that's conventionally good with prose that doesn't completely disorient you, with a plot that doesn't completely disorient you, with a sense of time that doesn't completely disorient you, then probably give Irene Iddesleigh a miss. But for true connoisseurs of prose and of style, I would recommend this book. I had a good time. I did feel like I was going insane during it, and now talking about certain aspects of particularly the timing of events, I feel even more insane. But yeah, I guess I'd recommend it to a particular person. If what we've talked about this episode sounds appealing to you, then you probably are the sort of person who'll get something out of this book. It's a strange midpoint, or not even a midpoint, a superposition of being hilarious and stunning in a fairly literal sense. Like, you're just kind of stunned and rattled when you read it. What about you? Would you recommend this to people?
I think if you liked Timothy Dexter, then yeah.
Yeah, or the Eye of Argon. I think calling this... So what the Eye of Argon is to science fiction, this is to romance novels.
Yeah.
But it's more ambitious. The Eye of Argon was a short story. This is a full novel.
Yeah. And I feel like in a way it's also if Timothy Dexter and what's his book called again? Just completely
A Pickle for the Knowing Ones.
Pickle for the Knowing Ones is kind of like the colonial American experience of being a deranged rich person. This is a Victorian English equivalent.
Yeah. I would say, so Timothy Dexter throws you because he actually was illiterate and the spelling doesn't make sense and there's no punctuation. Whereas this book, she throws you in a different way. She throws you because of her bizarre mastery of the English language.
I just love that she was dead serious.
Yeah. Like, my critics are too stupid to understand what I'm doing.
And now, 130 or so years later, because I think it was published in 1896 or something like that. Thousands of random people on the internet like making fun of it. Yeah, but I mean, she gave independent publishing a go back when it was really inaccessible. So
yes. Can you imagine being her husband and as a lovely 10th wedding anniversary present, financing this getting published? And opening it and reading it and going, whoa, what is going on?
It's great, honey. It's really good. I love it.
It truly is a book where...
It's a masterpiece, honey.
It's like, unironically, it's not a conventionally good book, but it's so bizarre that I don't know if I'd call it a conventionally bad book either. It's just its own strange thing.
Yeah. I would recommend it to people who got a kick out of The Eye of Argon, A Pickle for the Knowing Ones, The Room.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, nice.
Nice.
Anything else?
Our next Levi episode, because Levi's going to be taking a bit of a break, will probably be on The System's Neatest Trick by our Lord and Saviour Theodore J. Kaczynski.
Yeah, we'll be recording that in mid-May.
Yeah. Until then, got a bunch of interviews that I'm really looking forward to, like with Matthew Gasardo, Dustin Cole,
Nina Power.
Going to have Nina Power on to talk about Otto Weininger, who was a turbo incel who wrote a philosophical treatise on why women are fundamentally immoral or amoral, not even immoral. They just can't conceive of morality. No, it's not their fault. Which I'm actually not really enjoying. It's a bit of a slog. Got lots of fun stuff coming up. So we'll see you next time for that.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.